Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. It's Thursday, February 1st, and we're glad to be here tonight. We've had an awesome week at the Rock. I say that all the time, but it's true. This is an awesome job I get to do, and it was a nice place that we have to work, and we're so excited that we get this opportunity, and we're excited that we get to come to the radio and to social media every night from 6 to 7 and share health with you guys. And sometimes the shows are fabulous, and sometimes the shows are boring and stupid, and I get it. But you know what? We're working on that, trying to make them more fabulous. I think we're going to have a good show for you tonight. We've got some foundational thoughts about health and some things that went on today, and just some ideas that I had that I think maybe might help your day be better, might help your week be better, might help your whole family be better. So I hope you guys have had a good week. It really has. It's been a great week for us at the Rock. We're really blessed to get to do this stuff. So, and health is going. So this is actually the beginning of 6 months. We started this show on September 1st. So I think that's right. September, October, November, December, January. Yep. So we finished 5 months, and we're starting our 6th month as of today. And Victor and Letitia and Ken and Bob, they haven't kicked me off the radio yet. So I guess we get to keep going for a while. And I went and I had a great opportunity today at lunch to go speak to the AMBUCS group that one of the chapters that here in Lubbock. And if you guys don't know what they're all about, I don't know all of the ins and outs of it, and I know there's different chapters, and some of them put on a big auction, and some of them put on a rodeo, and the ABC Rodeo is that group, and then the Caprock basketball tournament, I believe is what it's called. They put that on too, and so those are big things in our community, and that is a big deal in our community, and they raise funds for Amtrikes. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Amtrikes, if you've ever heard of that before. But they're and I'm pretty sure that's what they're called, Amtrikes. That's what I've called them for years. But they're for kids who have developmental delays or some sort of physical challenge, some sort of mental challenge, and they need a bicycle or a tricycle. They'll get them out with their families, get them moving. They got these special made. They can put their hands on it. They can put their feet on it. That it'll strap their feet in, and sometimes they can strap their hands in. And then as they pedal, it moves their hands. They're just, if you've never seen one, and you never had the opportunity to see one, man, it is really, really an inspiring thing. And so I got to go speak to them today, to their group, and they actually had a presentation. So they had a little girl that had some trouble at birth. She was premature, I believe, and was having all kinds of health problems. Had to be in the ICU and whatever that's called with the kids, NICU or something. Yep. And she was the cutest little thing. She couldn't have been 1.5 feet tall. I think she was a little over a year or 2 years old or something. And she got her first trike today, and they brought it into the restaurant where we had the meeting, and they presented it to her and her mother, and put the little girl on the bike, and she just lit up. It was the coolest thing ever. She was so happy to get that bike. It was such a cute thing to watch them do that. And you know, man, in a world that's full of all kinds of mess and all kinds of stuff going on, and the dog eat dog lifestyles that we all are caught up in, and all that stuff, man, to have a group of people that are the sole purpose, I think, of that whole organization is directed towards those kids. And then they provide scholarships, I think, for physical therapists and to go to school, or occupational therapists or something. It's just a great organization that, as far as I can tell, from an outsider looking in, it's a great organization. I was really honored to get to go speak to them. I hope some of it was beneficial. You guys that have been watching the show for a long time, you'll know that I talked about the right brain and the left brain and how all that worked and how that kept us going. And so, that a lot of times when you hear that for the first time, like it's like, whoa, no one's ever, I mean, obviously if you've heard it for the first time, no one's ever told you that, but it's one of those things that no one talks about. I've been in this for a long time. I've been to lots of seminars. I've read lots of books. I've seen lots of videos. I don't hardly hear anybody that really drills down and talks about the how the nervous system works, how the right brain and the left brain work, and what their effects are on your health. How does your health? What difference does it make to your health? And so when we get that opportunity to go speak like that, it's a blessing for me. I'll just put it out there. So if anybody's listening to the show and you have a group that you would like me to come speak to, I would be more than happy to do that. I'll rearrange my schedule if I need to. That's the third one this year that we've gone out and had a chance to speak to, two different women's clubs, and then that club today. So I'm all about that. I'll share this message with as many people as I can to try to get as many people to understand health as we possibly can. So, and if you've got friends or family that you want to have a conversation with, if you're listening to us in San Antonio or Chicago or Florida or wherever, and you've got a group of people that you want to get together and have a Zoom call with, I'd be glad to do that too. I'd be glad to sit and talk to you. You can pick a subject that you'd want to talk about, and I would be glad to come and talk to you about it. If anything that we can do to share this information, we're working to try to make the show better. We want to get this all. I know that one of the things that bothers me about the show is I don't know if it comes across on your phones or your tablets or whatever, but it seems like the volume and my movement are not matched together. And I've been told multiple times that's an upload speed problem. And so we've got that new fiber run to the building. They're going to install it tomorrow. So maybe by tomorrow night's show, we'll be able to solve that problem. That'd be one thing that we can do. And then we're working on trying to get more people involved in the show so that we get a more diverse understanding of health and wellness, or if you've got an idea on that. But if you do have a group that you'd like for me to come talk to, let us know. Send us a text, 806-794-0400. I'd be glad to set that up. We do talks here at the office sometimes. It's a little tough now to do an evening talk because obviously we're on the radio, so it's hard to get some time in. But we can make it during the day. I've got some time during the day on several days that we can maybe make that happen. If you've got a group of people that you want to talk to, or if you got a family of members that you want to talk to, that'd be great. We can do that too. So one of the things that was said to me today that I thought was really funny, it was the first time ever that I've thought about it, the way that it was said. And one of my girls I've been taking care of for a long time, she's a fabulous girl. We love her to death here at the Rock. And she got adjusted, and she was telling me that she was having some SI joint pain. Her pelvis was not right, and she said it was really bothering her, and she said it actually started to lock up, like she was wondering if that was going to happen, and she said, it was hurting, and it was one of those moments where it just had to be mind over matter. And of course, I knew what that meant, right? Everybody knows what that means. It's mind over matter, right? But the way that, just kind of how she said it, and where I was in her adjustment and all that sort of thing, when she said that, she was like, it was just mind over matter. I just kind of had to force myself to move, and it just tickled me because I thought to myself, I was like, it's always mind over matter, like. Just sitting here in this chair is mind over matter, right? Whatever you're doing right now in your life, wherever you are right now in this moment, it's mind over matter. It's your brain that's controlling all this tissue that you got going on. And it's always doing that. And I know what I'm not trying to be a smart aleck or anything, because I know what she meant. And we had a good, it was funny. It was a funny conversation that we had while she's getting adjusted. But it was like I just thought, yeah, it just if you ever stop to think about it, every single thing you do is mind over matter. Your mind is making your matter move, and it's doing it through your nervous system. And there's energy that travels through your nervous system. I used the energy ball today over when I was doing the talk, and we had everybody hold hands around the table, and we touched that energy ball, and it lit up, and it was we connected the circuit, and it lit up all the way around, and they were like, they never seen that before. They was like, wow, what do we do? And I'm like, yeah, that's the way the mind over matter works, right? That's the way it actually works, is that your brain is receiving that information from your body. Your brain's receiving information from every part of your body. That's where the I don't have it, but that's where what we were talking about on Tuesday when we redid our Take Health to Church night. And let me see if I can find it real quick, because I'll see if I can pull it up here on my Bible app. But yeah, it was Hebrews 4, and where it talks where it says, for the word of God is alive and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. It penetrates even to dividing soul and spirit, joints and marrow. So it divides into all of our being, right? And our mind is connected to our entire body, through our nervous system. The way we move, our fingers is all run by our brain. Watch, you do this right here. You mess up your brain, and your fingers curl in, right? You ever seen a person that's having trouble with their brain? That their fingers curl in, right? And their wrist starts to bend, and they're all of a sudden their forearm gets really tight, and their bicep gets really tight, and they have trouble with moving their hand, right? Because now there's interference between the brain and the body. The mind over the matter is not working anymore, because it's broken, right? Now there's something that's maybe not broken, but definitely interfered with in a manner that is very disruptive. And maybe sometimes it's hard to fix, and maybe sometimes it's not fixable. There definitely can be opportunities where it's just not fixable at all. If you lose that ability to turn those flexor muscles off, right? That's one of the things that I don't think we I don't know. Maybe you do. Maybe you've heard it so many times now that you do understand how your brain inhibits your flexor muscles, and how important that is for you to get out and move, and get on your feet and move, right? That's one of the things we talked about at lunch. There was several accountants in there, and they came to me afterwards, and they were like, because I asked them, I said, how many of you guys sit at a desk for a career? Because they're all business people, and so I figured I would get a large number of them to answer that. And they did, and they were. I'm like, yeah. So think about it. Think about the dynamics of sitting, and what is actually happening, and how your body is being loaded, and what's going on. Just if you sit at a desk and you sit with your knees bent, at a desk for a long period of time, you're shortening those hamstrings, because that's what the hamstring does. The muscle that's on the back of your leg, right? It's going to shorten because you're sitting at that desk for a long period of time. And that shortening of that hamstring, that top of that hamstring, it connects to your pelvis right underneath your glute. So you can put your hand on the back of your leg and run your hand right up the back of your leg till you get right up underneath your glute. And that hamstring just comes in there and attaches right there on the little bone that's coming right down there off the bottom of your pelvis. And so when that hamstring gets tight, it starts pulling on that pelvis. and it starts decreasing the ability of that pelvis to move. And then now all of a sudden we set ourselves up for back pain. And another reason that hamstring gets tight is because of our brain and our frontal lobe. It doesn't inhibit. And I think by now you guys that watch the show, you get that. Get what inhibit means. Turn it off. The brain doesn't turn it off. Sometimes, we've said this lots of times. Healthy people inhibit. If you hadn't heard that in a while, think about that. Healthy people inhibit. So how do I inhibit my hamstring from getting tight? Well, one of the ways that I do that is make sure that my brain is firing on that side. There's a correlation between the resting tone of your hamstring and the way that your brain is firing. And so not only sitting in a chair with your knees bent does it shorten the muscle, but now you're off your feet, you're not driving your frontal lobe and your brain, and now that muscle is getting tight. So now when you stand up, you're anchoring down on that pelvis with that hamstring, and you increase the chances that you hurt your low back. And it ties back together. That's why it always goes back. Every single thing that we talked about for 5 solid months always goes back to interference in your nervous system, one way or the other. Where are you being subluxated? Where do you get that interference in your nervous system that causes your body to break down? And then once you just determine where you're getting that interference in your nervous system, now you start to go to work on it. And you can make it better, and you can do that by working on your brain. But you can also do that you actually work on your brain by getting on your feet. So you get on your feet and you move, and that drives you that way. So you can get that done. So the mind over matter statement, I just thought it was great. It was a cool statement, and so I'll leave it at that. Another thing, and we had this, and I brought this up, and I wanted to get into it a little bit more tonight. I wanted to get into the idea of genetics and epigenetics. That's one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about was genetics and epigenetics. And we've got it written in on our board that about 3 different, like Bruce Lipton. And I don't know when the last time I mentioned him. I know I mentioned him on the show. I don't know when the last time was. But Bruce Lipton, as a professor at Stanford, I don't know if he still is, and he's taught me a lot about epigenetics. And we've been given this idea that genetics is the reason that we have our problems. And I'm just going to present it to you that's not necessarily the reason. And here's one of the studies. Here's something that we've had in our this has been in our Eating for Health class for, I don't know, since 2009, I think, when we started doing our Eating for Health class. And these 2 guys, this is a report by Sir Richard Dole and Sir Richard Peto of the University of Oxford, submitted to the U.S. Congress, summarized many of these studies and concluded that only 2 to 3% of all cancers could be attributed to genes. Now, that's page 85 in the China study. So I've got the China study here, and I don't know if you guys have ever read the China study. We haven't done a breakdown on this. We probably should use one of our Wednesday night shows to break down the China study. But T. Colin Campbell, he was a PhD, and he wrote this book. And this book is really, really interesting about what's going on with cancer. And I don't remember if I've talked about it or not, but on page 85, he has this information. That's where I got this when he talked about that 2 to 3% of all cancers could be attributed to genes. Do the data from these international and migrant studies mean that we can lower our rates of breast cancer to almost 0 if we make perfect lifestyle choices? The information certainly suggests that this could be the case. Concerning the evidence in chart 4.7, the solutions seem to be obvious. If we eat less fat, most scientists made this conclusion, and some surmised that dietary fat caused breast cancer, but the interpretation was too simple. Other charts prepared by the professor were largely almost totally ignored to show that breast cancer was associated with, he says, animal fat intake, but not plant fat. So it's a different kind of, there's some different ways, and I just bring this up to talk about it in a manner that we think that we're taught that it's genetics that causes our problems, and it's not all genetics. It's very little of it actually. Some of it is in certain circumstances, but I want to talk about it from the idea of what Bruce Lipton talked about, and this is what we have written on our boards in the adjustment rooms this week. And let me get this turned on right here. See if I can get this done right. So what Dr. Lipton did is he was teaching the idea that in his lectures that it was our genetics that caused our expression, and he had 3 petri dishes in his lab. And you guys have seen a petri dish before, like if it's like in the little science lab in biochemistry or microbiology or whatever, you got, and it's those little dishes, little cups right there that you can put things in. We did them with mold one time, or all kinds of different bacteria. We went around, I think I told that, we went around the entire campus at Parker College, and we swabbed all over the campus to see where the germs were. And then we put them in these little petri dishes. We brought them back to the lab, and then we went home for the weekend. And when we came back on Monday, we looked at all the gross things that were in those little petri dishes. And there was one of them that was particularly the grossest. And when we got up close to it and read the label, it was my cell phone. My cell phone had more germs on it that was nasty looking than anything else in the entire campus. We covered we counted couches and bathroom handles and the refrigerators and the sinks in the kitchen and all that stuff. It was my cell phone that had the most. So that's one of my memories of petri dishes, right? But the Dr. Lipton was talking about this, and his name is Bruce. And what he was saying is that he had some stem cells, and he had the stem cells inside the petri dish, and he had all these different types of stem cells inside the petri dish, but they're identical. And you guys know a stem cell is identical, and so you got these cells, and they're inside these little dishes, right? So they're identical cells. A stem cell is an identical cell. And if you ever want, there's a really good book called Vibrational Medicine. And Vibrational Medicine talks about salamanders. And salamanders are, if you have any familiarity with salamanders, if you cut their arm off, they'll regrow a new arm. And I guess a salamander has 4 legs, but let's just consider the closest one to the head would be like the shoulder and the arm, and then the ones furthest away from the head would be like the hip and the leg. Well, if you take a salamander and you cut their shoulder off, their cells will redifferentiate back, and they'll make new stem cells, and then they'll just regrow an arm. But if you take those stem cells in the first, I think it's 13 days, but it might be in the first 9 days or 8 days. I don't remember exactly, but it's within before the 2-week period of time. If you take those stem cells and you move them down to the hip, they will grow a leg. That's crazy. They somehow know where they are energetically. They know where they are on the body, and they're able to, if you move them, you cut the salamander's shoulder off, the arm off, that it creates the stem cells. and then 3 days later or 4 days later, you take those cells and move them down to the hip, it will grow a new leg off of the salamander. But after whatever that time frame is, day 9 or 13 or whatever, I can't remember exactly the time frame, but if you take that after that time and you move those stem cells from the shoulder down to the hip, it will grow an arm. So in those first few days, that stem cell is getting information on what it's supposed to do based on energy from that salamander. There's something that tells it whether or not it's supposed to grow an arm or whether or not it's supposed to grow a leg. Well, what Dr. Lipton was doing in his lab was, because what his lecture said that it's the DNA inside the cells, these stem cells, it's your chromosomes, it's your DNA, right? That's what is causing your expression. But what he did was he fed all of these something different. Like he changed the medium. We're going to a break, so before I get into that, because we are going to a break, I'm going to just hang on just a second, and then we'll get to this on the other side of the break. But I think it's really interesting how what he found out when he was working with these stem cells and exactly what was happening. So you guys stick with us. We'll be back in just a few minutes with Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. Yeah, I'll wait for them, for the radio people to come back, because I think it's pretty cool that the difference between those things, because, if you get convinced that your heart disease or your high cholesterol or your low testosterone or whatever your thing is because that's what we mentioned last night. I think if you get convinced that is due to your genetics, you all of a sudden take yourself off the hook and no longer have any responsibility for your environment. Like if my granddaddy had high cholesterol, my daddy had high cholesterol, and I believe that the reason that I have high cholesterol is my genetics, then there's nothing I can do about it, right? I mean, what can I possibly do about it? I have the genetics that just says I'm going to have high cholesterol. Well, maybe that's true in about 3%, 2 to 3% of the cases, which means that it wouldn't be true in 97 to 98% of the cases, right? That wouldn't be true. So maybe it's our environment that we put ourselves in. When we put ourselves in an environment that causes us to increase our cholesterol, then we get high cholesterol. If we put ourselves in an environment that causes us to decrease our testosterone, then we get low testosterone. It's not, I just don't believe it. I don't believe it's our genetics at all. And so that's not true. I don't believe that plays the majority role in it. I think what happens is, and based on information that I've learned from like Dr. Lipton, there's just certain things that it's what we put how we're treating our bodies. And so we talked about it last night, I know, because we talked about eicosanoids and we talked about the inflammation that we get when we eat too many omega-6s. And that's something that we've talked about since the beginning of the show as well. So I think we're coming back. Hang on one second. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Jason Clemmons, and you are listening to Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We are talking right now about epigenetics and genetics and the difference between the two thoughts. And I wanted to get into a little bit about what we have written on the board here in the office this week, because it's talking about that, and it's teachings from Dr. Bruce Lipton. So what he did is he had these stem cells in each one of these petri dishes, and he fed them different things. He put inside the petri dish the things that the stem cells actually feed off of, and the nutrients for those cells. And so he put like he put food A in the first petri dish, and then he put food B in the second petri dish, and then he put food C in the third petri dish. And so what he got from that was 3 different expressions. So the stem cell in the salamander grows the shoulder whenever it's you cut the arm off. When it's up here close to the head, or however that salamander figures that out. But when it's up here close to the head, that stem cell is going to end up growing a shoulder, right? But if you move it down to the hip, it ends up growing a leg. It's like, whoa, hang on, that's 2 different things. How did it know what to do? Well, it was the environment that told the stem cell what to do with itself. So what Dr. Lipton found out was when he changed the medium in each one of these petri dishes, he ended up with a different expression. He ended up with the expression that changed. It was like, whoa, if I fed this cell one thing, I ended up with a certain expression of those cells. Like they ended up growing into skin, or they ended up growing into bone, or they ended up growing into like the lining of the intestine, like something like that, right? But it had a different expression. So if he fed it food C, he got expression C. If he fed it food B, he got expression B. And the same thing happened with food A. He got expression A. And when you look at something like that, maybe it makes you think. Maybe it makes you think a little bit. It makes me think. And since it's Thursday night and we're just going to sit here and think about it anyway, I think we should just look at it and think of it. So when we look at it and we say to ourselves, okay, if that's what happened in the lab, and what Dr. Lipton is actually teaching us is that when you look at something, when you feed a stem cell one set of food, it gives you expression, one certain expression. But if you change that food that you give to that stem cell, you get a totally different expression. And if you change it again, you get a totally different expression, right? So think about the impact that has on our bodies. Think about the impact from the 3 things that we talk about when it comes to health: the physical, the chemical, and the mental emotional stress. Those 3 things that we have, the environment, the food that we're feeding ourselves, the physical, chemical, and mental emotional food that we feed ourselves could possibly have a great impact on the expression of our cells. Like that's just like, and I know that's not like major like mind-blowing information right there, but I do think it's kind of interesting to study that and kind of look at that. So what if the expression was high blood pressure? What if what we were talking about was high blood pressure? And all of a sudden our blood pressure went up and our body started to express high blood pressure. Well, let's say that if we put our environment, let's call it, instead of like saying food A into the petri dish, let's just take the petri dish as being us. Like this is us. This is the human right here. This is our body and mind. Like this is a combination of us. And now let's say, okay, well, and let's say food is just our environment. So the combination of physical, chemical, and mental emotional stresses. Say if I put my body in an environment that is not congruent, is incongruent, if I put my body in an environment that does not allow it to express health, then I might get something like high blood pressure, right? I mean, that's conceivable to think that that's a possibility, that we could actually put ourselves in an environment that would cause us to express high blood pressure. Now, did we get high blood pressure because of the genetics that was inside, the DNA inside the cell? Did we get, in this example, did we get that right there? Did that express high blood pressure because of my genetics? Well, if that's the case, if the high blood pressure was because of my genetics, and then I changed my environment to a different environment, and all of a sudden my high blood pressure went away. My high blood pressure went away. Would that still hold water, that the reason that I had high blood pressure was because of the genetics in that cell? Could I make that argument and say, wait a minute, once I change my food source, once I change my environment, I no longer had high blood pressure? Well, wait a minute. If that's the case, then maybe I should think about that and say, okay, well, so if I change my environment, then my blood pressure goes away. Maybe it wasn't my genetics that caused that in the first place. Maybe it was the environment that caused that. And that's the concept right there of epigenetics. Upon epigenetics. That's a simple way of kind of saying that that's what's going on with us right there. Like if we put ourselves in an environment that is incongruent with health, our body expresses symptoms to let us know that our environment is incongruent with health. Like, I don't know if that's confusing. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody. I don't know if it's something that is normal. So you can take any symptom. You can take any symptom you want to and run it through that model and see, does it hold up? It pretty much anything you're dealing with. What is going on? Patient today said entire left side is all jacked up. Why is my left side? Why is it always my left side? It's my low back on my left side. It's my knee on my left side. It's this whole thing on my left side. Why is it jacked up? And you're not going to guess the first question that I asked her is when she told me that, she said to me, why is it always my left side that's jacked up? And I said to her, my first question to her when she told me that she has low back problems on the left, she has hip problems on the left, she has knee problems on the left, and sometimes she has shoulder problems on the left. And she was like, and so my first question to her was, would you consider yourself to be ADD? And she said to me, yes, I just went to the doctor and got medicine for ADD. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. I mean, and I was like, I hadn't seen her in several weeks. But I was like, that's interesting. Did your doctor, you went in and told your doctor that, she went in and told her doctor that she was overwhelmed with things and she just couldn't seem to, she had so much going on, she couldn't stay focused, she couldn't get things done, and she didn't know what to do about it. And I was like, okay. So, but the question, the interesting thing is, why was that the first question that I had for her? Like, when she told me that her low back on the left and her knee on the left and her shoulders sometimes on the left, it's always the left. And she said, I think it's because maybe I crossed my legs when I sit down, and I'm like, okay, I'm thinking to myself, nope, I don't think it has to do with you crossing your legs. And so when she told me that she was having low back issues on the left and knee and hip problems on the left, that immediately took me into the brain to tell me that, hey, I think maybe what's happening to her is that left hemisphere is not functioning properly. It's underactive. And if that left hemisphere is underactive, then what's going on with that frontal lobe on that left side? Well, that frontal lobe on that left side is decreased in function. So what's going on with all of her muscle tone on her flexor muscles on her right side? On her left side. Her SCM muscle from the back of your neck, on the back of your skull, sorry. There's a little point right up underneath your ear. And that little point, that bony point right up underneath your ear is that's called your mastoid, and that is part of your skull. And there's a muscle that runs from there that runs right straight down and attaches to your sternum, which is right that little notch right there at the bottom of your throat where you can hit bone. That's your sternum. And your clavicle, which is your collarbone, ties in right there to that joint too. And that muscle called the SCM comes right down there and splits. It has two different insertion points. It has one on the clavicle and it has one on the sternum. And that's called the sternocleidomastoid, the SCM muscle right there. It's that thick muscle that you got going on right on your neck. That SCM muscle is a flexor. Your pec muscle, your pecs, right in the front of your chest, that's a flexor. Your bicep on your arm is a flexor. Your psoas muscle down here that connects your lumbar spine to your hip is a flexor. Your hamstring on the back is a flexor. Your calf is a flexor. All those things are not functioning properly. But then she told me she had ADD. Right? Yeah. And that's an interesting thing. And that's probably not the question that I would have asked her 10 years ago. I probably wouldn't have mapped it out to that question. I think I probably would have just worked on the left side like everybody else does, right? I think I would have just probably gone right straight into the same concept that okay, well, maybe there's something wrong with your low back or your hip on the left side. But as soon as she told me that she had ADD, remember focused attention? We've been talking about that a bunch here the last few days. We talked about it again probably on Wednesday or Tuesday, something. Focused attention. Focused attention is what happens in the left hemisphere, right? Focused attention. What else happens on the left hemisphere? Dopamine. Those two things happen in the left hemisphere. So what would a person do if they had low left hemisphere activity? They would have a hard time focusing, and they would be searching for sugar. They would be searching for chocolate, alcohol, any of those things like that, right? If that's something that a person's going to do whenever that left hemisphere is not working properly, it all fits together. It's behavior. That's what some of the people at lunch told me. They're like, so because one of the guys like, how do you know which side of the brain's working and which side of the brain's not working, or how do you know if there's disruption in the pattern? Basically, is what he was trying to ask me. And when he did that, I said, well, that's what we check posture for. That's why when I look at you, I have you close your eyes and tilt your head, and we check your posture. And when we check your posture, if your head is tilted, one of the reasons it might be tilted is because that SCM is tight over there on that side. And your arm's going to roll in because your pec muscle is going to be tight. And so that was kind of funny because one of the girls in there, the ladies, she said to me, she's like, so do you go in a room like this and you can just diagnose people in the room based on what you see. And I just kind of started laughing. I was like, sometimes at this point we actually do that. Like I don't do it formally, like in any sort of formal way, but like going to the mall or going to a ball game or sitting with people or talking with people or watching people. I like to do that a lot. Like I'll just I like to see their movement, see how they're going, and then try to map those things out and see if they make sense. Now I can't get into whether or not they have ADD or any of that stuff just by looking at them in a room. It's not a weirdo thing. It's just kind of like, yeah, that is kind of what you do is you just kind of evaluate, how people are functioning. And it would be an interesting thought from a wellness standpoint. When I got introduced to that group today, the guy that introduced me, his wife is a patient in our office. That's how I got to go speak to them. And when I got introduced, he introduced me. He said he has a different approach to wellness. And I thought while he was introducing me, I thought to myself, that's an interesting statement. Like he has a different approach to wellness, and it's like I don't know. Maybe we do. Maybe we have a different approach to wellness, or maybe it's just wellness. Maybe it's just the way that it actually works. Maybe it's not such a different approach, because I don't really think, to me, this all fits together. To me, it's like it's like what like that's why I just look at the brain, and and the deeper I study the brain, and the more of those pathways that I start to kind of understand, and the more I start to with the clinical work that we do, and you put those two things together, and you just start to get a picture of how unwell we are and what is the cause of our unwellness. So when that girl got on ADD medication, is that the solution to her ADD? Did it solve her? Did it solve the problem of going up and to the right and over to the left? Did this problem get solved whenever she got ADD drugs? I said, when you told your doctor that you had ADD, he probably told you that your left hemisphere was underactive. And then and she just kind of looked at me like, what? And I was like, yeah, he probably didn't say that. I know that's what he meant. That's probably what he meant, but it's not really what he said, right? He just said, here, take some of these drugs. This will help you focus. And it's like, well, okay, but as long as there's no side effects from those drugs, as long as there's no detrimental effects to those drugs, right? As long as those drugs don't interfere with the neurons inside your brain and then cause them to malfunction and cause other problems, like I wonder what would possibly happen if we did something like that. If could there possibly be any side effect to treating ADD with a drug that has nothing to do with the fact that you have ADD in the first place? I wonder if that might cause us to move away from wellness instead of moving towards wellness. I think maybe that's not such a far-fetched idea. I think it's kind of actually true that that's the case. And so, what did I do for her? Well, I gave her a list of things that she can do. I gave her some left hemisphere information. So, what are some of the things that a person might do to drive the left hemisphere? Well, one thing is you can look at blue things that make you happy. You can look at blue things that make you happy. That was one thing that we said. Number two is you can do easy math problems. If I could spell. Easy math problems. Not hard ones. Just get you an app, and I haven't even looked it up, but you can get yourself an app and just do some easy math problems. Number three is you can smell under your left nostril. So what you do is you cover up the right side, and then just get something that you know, like cinnamon or coffee or some sort of smell that that you know, and and you're not trying, especially like don't get a Sharpie marker or something crazy like that and toxify your brain. But you smell in your left. Your smelling doesn't cross over to the other side. Your smelling goes directly up into that hemisphere. So if we're trying to drive the left, that's something that we can do is we can smell under our left with our left nostril. Number 4 is we can spin to the right looking at our thumbs. So I could put my thumbs out in front of me, put my eyeballs on my thumbs, and then I can spin in a circle all the way around in a circle to the right. Now listen, if you got balance problems, or be careful if you were going to do something like that. You want to be careful with that. You don't want to fall and hurt yourself. And so that's something that you can do. And then number 5 is listen to music with a beat. Music with a beat in the right ear, because the sound will cross over. So when we listen to something, we listen to it with our ear, sound will cross over to that left hemisphere. Smell will fire straight up from that hemisphere. When we go in a circle to the right, we fire that right side cerebellum. And the right side cerebellum fires across to the left hemisphere. Those are all things that we can do to activate. The other thing is we can fire this right SCM muscle. And one of the ways that we fire this right SCM muscle is to do our pursuits to the left. And what I did to her is I got her in there and I got her to follow my pen. And I said, look, turn your head when you follow the pen. And what did she do? She did this. Remember that? We talked about that the other day. Instead of doing this, and I hope you can see it. You guys on the radio can't see it, but maybe you can see it on the Walk by Faith Facebook page. But when you rotate your head, she rotated her head to the left and fell backwards. Like her face and her cheek came up like that. And she turned her head. When she followed the pen, she turned her head back and her head fell in that direction. She's not firing that SCM muscle. That's just not functioning. It's not firing. So what did I have her do? I had her pull her ear down towards her sternum. Rotate her head. Get her head to rotate. Fire that SCM muscle right there. So when she went in that direction, I said, look, you got to over-exaggerate that tilt. You got to pull on that SCM right there, because that SCM has a relationship to that opposite side cortex. So whenever you're wanting to do that, you could do that yourself. Just do that with both thumbs. Just rotate your head. Put your thumb out in front of your nose. Take your arm up to 45 degrees and just rotate like that and see what your head does. Does your head fall back, or does your head actually rotate, and can you fire that muscle? Because the neurological firing pattern that goes through there fires from the cerebellum up across to the other side. All those things are those are just things that we can do, and then so that you can do all that, and that would help her ramp up that left side, because I guarantee you that like all those things are happening. That focused attention, the dopamine, all that stuff happens over there on that left side, and I really think that the original problem was the up and the right and then over to the left is not firing properly. I think that's the original problem, but there could be something that we just need for this particular case to fire it in that direction and see if we can ramp that up. So I hope that was helpful for you guys. I hope it was something that maybe you learned something, and I hope you guys, so this is the end of the show. I hope you guys have a great night, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night at 6.